Could you do some videos showing us examples of how Dillon might be using it for more of a fullback role? Well, here's the problem with that. And I'm not saying he can't do it, and I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying one of the knocks is Aaron Jones ran harder, like behind his pads more. So if you're thinking fullback, you guys think use check, right? I think Ricard or like old school Lorenzo Neal, right? I'm thinking violent, right? I don't know if he's like, is he a violent guy? And does AJ Dillon think of himself as a fullback? I don't think so. What do we got here? There was a lot of talk on that helmet thing. I don't know. Okay. Once a prospect gets drafted, do they speak with their position coach right away if they wish to find out what they could work on prior to leading up to training camp? I think a lot of draftees would be chomping at the bits. Good work, right? No. So they're actually in the building relatively quickly, and they go through like an indoctrination period. I don't know exactly how it is with the Packers, but they go through this indoctrination period where they'll talk to like the video guy and like the player engagement guy and their coaching staff, and they start learning the playbook. And so, yeah, you would hope that a good coach would be like, all right, look, I've watched every film on you. Here's the two things I want you to work on. Here's how we're going to do it. Like with my guys, you got a plan. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it 10 minutes a day. Here's how it's going to work. Blah, 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 blah. Here's our progression. Here's why we're doing it. Full explanation. Learn how to own your own stuff. Then we'll then obviously start. The big thing for, I think, college guys is learn how to watch tape like a pro. That's the big thing. And the sooner they do that, the better. Question: Buller playing nickel somewhere. The Packers mean when they say they want safety and nickel interchangeable. I talked about this already, right? So it's you got three guys now that are able to kind of play both safety positions and the nickel slot in Keyshawn, Xavier McKinney, and then obviously Javon Buller coming in. So you've got three guys that have experience at all three positions. That's going to be a real asset to you because you can now mix and match personnel, mix and match with specific players. The kind of defenses you run, your playbook expands from a defensive coordinator standpoint because you got guys that can do everything very, very easily. How much of an expectancy do first and particularly second round picks have to start back then and now? Well, I talked about this earlier. It really depends on your position and the back. Like Lucas Van Ness had, there was no expectation that Lucas Van Ness was going to start next year or last year, probably even this year, right? So it just depends by the team. So Goody doesn't think about it that way as necessarily. I think the personal expectations for everybody is to come in and try to start, and you want to get in. The sooner you start, the sooner you get to your second contract, really. So you're trying to get there as fast as you can, but a lot of it is just based on where you're at, where your development's at. And most of these guys are like 22 years old on average. So they're so young, really you're going to peak physically 27, 28, 29 years old. And then it's like a question of, can you get your mental up to your physical at that point? And so obviously the more reps you get matters, but sitting behind some guys and learning from some really good dudes, like good mentors, that really helps as well for guys like me who came out from a place that doesn't know anything about like pass setting. Like that kind of stuff's a big deal. I'm interested in the center. Monk, can he replace Myers in 25 and keep Tom? Tom's not going to play tackle. Maybe in 2025. I think in the next 2 or 3 years, the guy starts. I think he's a starting Cowboy player. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely for sure. I think, I see a pathway to him starting before Jordan Morgan, which I know is not going to happen given where they were drafted. And again, I'm not dumping on Jordan Morgan at all. I just think, I think it's hard for him to start a tackle. I think it's more realistic with Myers leaving, a contract year, that this guy starts at center in 2025 than anything. I could be wrong. Balaga was on William Tausch talking about how shorter arms can be overcome with technique. Guys, real quick, the short arms things, this is where data gets wasted. So what's happened is you take measurements of everything, then you look at players that have problems with stuff, and they go, oh, it's because they have short arms. Like if you have unrealistically short arms, it's a problem. But like one arm's longer than two. If I reach to you, I'm going to be able to get you no matter what, right? So if you're going to try the long arm stab, like you're not going to be able to get my pads either way. So it's all a technical thing. It's pre-contact body position, footwork, etc. How you punch, how you use your hands. Are you able to like wipe hands off? Are you able to attack elbows and wrists just like the defensive ends and tackles do? It's such an overused stat because guys who really don't know what they're looking at are on TV too often because they got nice suits and they're talking about stuff that, quite frankly, there's not a single player in the National Football League who's like, oh, hey, man, I can't wait to attack this guy's arms are so short. Now, If you play a guy that has really, really long arms, it sucks. But it doesn't there's like one or two guys that are outliers that have like Calais Campbell would be one of those guys. It's like he's an outlier. He's so big. So on the other end, there's outliers where they're so small that you're like, oh, I really have to worry about this because like everybody's got way too long arms for that player. But the majority of the guys they're talking about was like, oh, arms are too short. It's like, no, they're not. They're really not. You just have to. The way that we teach pass pro is so poor because a lot of coaches teach it upright. So it's like, yeah, you're punching out like this all the time instead of punching low to high. We can get into that in another conversation, but it's like the technique they teach is so poor. The body position is so poor. Like no other sport, no other position in any sport in the world tries to look like some of these coaches teaching pass pro. But that's why, the good guys make a lot of money and the bad guys don't because they can't overcome their arm length because they're sitting straight up and down. Starting 5 O-line, way too early prediction, please. And as a former O-lineman, how tough is it to learn another spot on the line? It's harder to flip sides because the right hand, left hand thing because your footwork, everything changes than going like guard to tackle. Like because generally now, especially with the geometry of the pocket, it's not that different. Prediction is Walker, Jenkins, Myers, Ryan, Zach Tom out the gate. It might change. Jordan Morgan, I think they might put him at guard, but it's hard to start. You really got to show his hands are not good. And so you really have to Tauscher is the only player I've ever seen in my life who can lose every rep. He can have outside hands every single rep and win every single rep. I don't know if you'll ever see another guy like that. He just had a very, very unique way of his center of gravity, his bends. He was just Tauscher is one of the freakiest athletes that you'd never know was a freaky athlete. Just the way that he can move was unique. And I don't know. I don't think this isn't the same. Although you do see some of that weight distribution model when he has to sit and sink his hips and all that. He does that really well. I think he weighs 311 pounds. It might be tough at guard without the technique work, which would put Ryan ahead of him right now. Fred Morgan uses his hands badly. Yeah, we showed it. He says he's already had people coaching him to apply his hands. Well, no, he hasn't, quite frankly. The development in college is not very good. That's weird to hear, but it's true, man. Gino, the coach from UConn says this all the time. He's there's really, really bad coaches, and he's talking about the basketball. He's there's really, really bad coaches in the professional ranks. There's really, really bad coaches in college, and there's some really, really good coaches in the high school ranks that nobody will ever know about, and that's the absolute truth. I'm overly interested in the guy from Duke. Yeah, so am I. How long does it take a veteran like you to know if a rookie has what it takes to make it in the NFL? First day of practice, first week. Okay, here's what it is. Depends on the position, obviously. But for an offensive lineman, I'll go back to Tausch. So Tausch was playing against Vonnie Holiday every day in training camp, and he was a rookie. And everybody thought, I've told the story before, everybody thought they picked him up because he was from Wisconsin, a feel-good story, because he was really, really late round. Nobody knew who he was. He didn't lose a single rep the entire training camp. I don't think he lost a rep for 4 years. I think Campman, his year, literally maybe Tauscher's fourth or fifth year was the first time he lost a rep in one-on-ones in training camp. It was to Aaron Campman, who ended up being all pro that year. Right. So there's these signs where you go, oh man, this guy's getting pretty good. Now there's guys that are obvious when you meet when Laramie Tunsil got drafted by Miami, everyone's oh, he's the best. He's the best player. I mean, Pouncey was there, but as far as non-center guys, you're oh, he moves better than everybody else. Or when Chad showed up and everyone's oh, he's three, Mike Flanagan and I, who, athletic guys, he could get 3 kicks in the time that we got 2, and we were faster than 99% of the people in the NFL for our positions. And he could get 3 kicks before we can get 2. We're oh, he weighs 15 pounds more than us. He's a better human. So it kind of, I know it kind of happens pretty fast. Sharks smell sharks, right? How do you think Xavier McKinney will influence the new guys at safety positively? He's the team captain. All these guys are. I just think we don't know a lot about the defense, but I just think it's really exciting to think about having multiple guys in the backfield that can do a lot of things well. And these guys can do a lot of things well. I think that's the biggest thing about McKinney, actually, when you sit there and watch tape on him, he just does a lot of things really well, and he can play in a lot of different positions. The Giants we showed before, like, I don't really love how he comes off, when he blitzes. Like, I don't really love his like pass rush kind of blitz stuff. But he can play at the line of scrimmage. He can play at the second level. He can play in the back. He's got great range. He's a good tackler, So he does a lot of stuff really, really well. And they've used him in the blitz, even though you'd like to see him with some like better moves, I guess. And I think you're gonna be able to say that about all three guys. Can Morgan survive or thrive at left tackle in the NFL? Yeah, so I kind of answered this already. I think the short answer is he can play left tackle, but we kind of saw it on tape. Like, a lot of the stuff that you can get away with in the college games, like you get away with a lot of, like, people get beat in the NFL and nobody notices, right? Because the ball gets off. So it's like always worried about the outcome, not worried about the process. That's why you come here. Hopefully you want to see, all right, are we actually getting better? What do these guys need to work on? Like, it's like, how do you beat somebody or how do you make them better? You're only worried about two things, really. And I think he can do it. It's just there's some work to be done. It starts with your feet, and then how do your feet and your hands marry up? What's your take on Goody going so heavy on team captains? Yeah, I think it's a good deal, man. And here's why. I don't know. I've never really felt, and I think Matt LaFleur showed his coaching stripes last year, and there's no doubt about that. But I also think they have a very, very strong locker room that just got a lot weaker with Aaron Jones leaving. And I think this is a player-led team, or it needs to be a player-led team just based on the personality of the head coach and based on the goals and the ambitions for this team. If a Super Bowl team is usually a player-led team, right? And so that locker room needs to be strong. You need to have leadership in there that can get along with everybody. So that's what I think is maybe most important, and that's why Goody's looking at that stuff, and that's why it's such a priority for him. And usually those guys are pretty good players as well, right? Like, you need water carriers on your team. Not everybody's going to be an all-pro. You need guys that are just willing to do the dirty work, and he's certainly willing to do. Those guys are usually ready to do that, if that makes sense. Do I have any more here from you guys? The marshmallow helmet thing. Here's the last one. What's the biggest surprise that I have from watching the film? It was Javon Bullard. I thought Javon Bullard was really good. I think all of these guys are like interesting for their different reasons. And look, like, I'm not really good at, should this guy be drafted here? Like, can he play football or not? For me, the linebacker steps in right now and has some traits that I would put him on the field day one. I might put him on the field against anybody you have right now and let him figure it out. Like, I think he's got that kind of ceiling. We'll see who coaches him. Bullard's a day one, walk out with the position, learn it right now. I think it's a no-brainer. Marshawn is a day one. You're the backup. You are already better than AJ. As far as we can do some things with you we can't do with him. And he only is averaging 4 yards a carry in a really, really weak defense, these days. So I think that's kind of where it's at. First rounder, I don't see him. He's not a day on walk. He's a second team guy right now. You could probably going to try him at different positions. He's just got a ton of technical work to do. If he bears down and works on it, he's certainly got everything else. I have nothing disparaging to say about him in the sense that he's a football player and he's going to make it in the National Football League. There's no doubt in my mind. The timing will be interesting because of where we're at with some of these guys. And then the last guy I talked about, I know I touched on Cooper, but the last guy we talked about, the center from Duke, Jacob Monk. I think that in 3 years from now, he starts on a team. If it's not this team, then he's just because he's gotten traded. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's got too good at hips. He's strong. He's got good feet, bad footwork, right? And you just see that all over the board with a lot of people. Good feet, bad footwork. And good feet, bad footwork is very fit. Like, who had good feet, footwork? Shaq Mason, back when he was with the Patriots. And he had Scarnecchia, and then you kind of work that out. Now he's been, I don't know how many years he's been in the league now. He was really damn good. He was really good last year. Okay. So you got that kind of guy. I'd be excited about that opportunity. So thanks to our sponsor, Bet Online. Guys, it's an exciting time for the locker room, for the organization, for the fan base. Now it's just figuring out where these pieces are. And, everyone's going to want to live or die with one video clip and this and that. And I get it. Hopefully you come over here and get something a little more balanced. And if you're enjoying this, man, please subscribe, rate, and review. Hit me up at MikeWall68 on Twitter. Prostitute Perform on Instagram. If you would have any questions about the show, any questions about the team, any questions about the National Football League,